The one way to get yourself in these spaces or rooms is not to write a book, is to write one really well-written article. That is if you can write 1,000 words or 1,500 words that's really strong about something, that can actually pique the interest of an editor and agent to reach out to you.
You're listening to Madam Speaker Says, your no fluff cheat code to becoming the voice everyone listens to. I'm your host, Machokhodi. If you've been waiting for a permission slip to straighten your crown and take up space like you invented the blueprint, Madam Speaker Says got you covered. No whispers, no apologies, just you, me, and some bold ass moves. Let's get into it. Welcome, everybody. You are listening to Madam Speaker Says. I'm so excited and thrilled to have you here with us for another episode of Madam Speaker Says. You are in for a treat today because this, as you know, is the place where you learn about thought leadership and you hear from the best kinds of thought leaders who are in the trenches, who are doing the work, who are making the money, okay? Like we're about bank, honey. The bag is bagging and it's Gucci. And who, are people like this particular guest is someone who gets me so excited because they embody the thing that I keep saying when I say we need to be different kinds of thought leaders. We can't be the fuddy-duddies that we've inherited. I mean, God bless them, right? Like there's a lot of them we admire, but there's a lot that's broken about what it means to be a thought leader, to be the kind of person who's a madam speaker. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Kleaver Cruz, they, them pronouns.
Yes.
Kleaver,
Hello, darling. How are you?
I am so delicious and I'm so delicious, mostly because I'm sitting here across from you and seeing that
Yeah.
gorgeous smile.
Yes.
Kleaver, I'm going to ask you just, let's dive in and I'll introduce you in just a heartbeat. But first,
Sure.
I want to hear from you. Why is it important for Black, brown, queer people, marginalized people? Why is it important for us to see ourselves as thought leaders and to really embody what it means to be a thought leader?
That's a great question. First, thank you for having me.
Of course.
The very first thing that came to mind is to remember.
Mm.
And the importance is in that is we're in times where memory is being attacked, amongst other things, that the intention of destroying institutions and banning books and all of that is to further the restriction of our education, which is really memory. It's to remember that we didn't begin in 16 whatever, in 14 whatever. We began at the literal beginning. There was no Adam and Eve, respectfully. It was black people. It's whatever they want to call themselves in that moment. And I'm joking, but I'm saying that to say part of what I've always, and particularly in the last decade or so, I've learned to believe is that the well we get to draw from is as deep as the beginning of our existence.
Mm.
And so the thought leadership, part of it is speaking truth to power, that we still are in positions where we have to speak truth to power, and that the power isn't always individuals per se, but to the growing sentiments that believe in our inferiority, that further these distinctions that are arbitrary and artificial between us. Because I think to be a leader, part of it is to understand the landscape, and that really means standing behind the room so you can see the whole room and not at the front of it, because the vantage point from the back of the room is very different. And if you can see from the furthest person by the wall, you can still see what's at the front. Um, and that matters. That matters to not only view things from the front row. Um, yeah, I'll stop there.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I mean, what you're saying about memory and memory being under attack right now. We're living in a time where books are being banned, books are being burned, literally,
Literally.
right? Libraries are being forced to take stacks off the shelves and burn them. And I I want to just remind people that this is the time that we are living in. It's not happening in 1930s, Third Reich Germany. It's happening today. So
Mhm.
the call for us to be thought leaders, and this is my next question. What is a thought leader? What is in your estimate, what qualifies somebody to be an outstanding thought leader? If you want to give us examples, that's great, but I want to understand and help the person who's listening understand, right? What are we talking about? Who is an extraordinary thought leader?
That's a great question. Two things came to mind is one is I'm an Aquarius, which is only to say that by nature, by astrological alignment, I can't go with the flow. I cannot be with the program. So I feel like part of a leader is willing to do that. A thought leader is willing to think differently and be in that. That it's okay. Even what I was sharing earlier about before we started recording of my experience of grad school right now, that I'm being reminded that, and shout out to my therapist, Veronica Dance. She keeps telling me it's good. It's good that you disagree. It's good that you're frustrated because that is all signals to what you need to focus on and what's missing that you need to contribute to. So I encourage you to be frustrated. I encourage you to ask questions about what's missing and that type of thing because that to me signals the voids that you need to fill. That I love that framing, and then it also made me think about my grandma, who doesn't have more than a second grade education, and I consider her a thought leader because she has that fierceness of like she is willing to say what's on her mind and what her thought is of like, and that, oops, sorry, sorry, that she has,
Don't be
and this also connects something
don't
we
be
were just
sorry when you're
talking
talking
about.
about your grandma. Come on.
We something you and I just talked about as well is that she has I wouldn't call her religious, but she's deeply spiritual. So she has a very deep conviction that she draws from that place, this sense of knowing, so to speak, that so yeah, she's an example for me in that way that she's willing to say what she feels and willing to be unpopular. If that means
Mhm.
that people will speak to her less or that person don't want to talk to her no more or whatever, but she's more committed to the integrity of her word to herself and the meaning that she has around that than if somebody cares to be her friend or not. I'm learning. I don't want to wait that long to get there. But she really is an example of that for me. And for that, also my mom, of like two women that, yeah, they're strong, all those things, but I really mean like their vocal ability, that they're willing to speak and stand against things audibly, and that they're not on social media and all that. These are the people that in the real world, if something's going down,
You're gonna
my
hear
little five, okay, like my little 5 foot mom is gonna be like, "What's going on here? Why is this happening? A child is missing their mom. Grab my hand. We gotta find your parents," kind of thing. So I think thought leaders also can bridge that gap of thought to action. That there's like an incitement happening. Also, it's not all um, thinking. So it's not just one big intellectual exercise. Is what I'm saying.
I love that. And there's three words that I want to pop out in people's minds that you said: friction, right? Fierceness, tell the damn truth,
Yes.
and action.
Yes.
And those words are the words that I would use to describe you.
Ooh.
Those words are the words that I would use to describe you. I want people to understand why I invited you onto this platform.
Oh my God.
Cleaver is a writer. They are, please correct me throughout if I trip.
It's okay.
Cleaver is a writer, is an educator, is a published author of the Black Joy Project, is the founder of the Black Joy Project. So before the Black Joy Project was a book, it was a movement and it was in
Mhm.
people's lives and it had
Mhm.
traveled and touched people's lives in South Africa, where he's held
Mhm.
workshops, in Brazil, in the Netherlands, in the United States. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I admire the most about you is how you have used movement building to be a thought leader, right?
Mhm.
What I see that's super powerful about you and what you're able to do, and I'm going to back it up with a real life example, is you are the kind of person who knows how to give people permission to lean into the parts of ourselves that sometimes we're most uncomfortable with, that
Mhm.
sometimes we're not taught, given the tools to let be the thing that is part of our leadership, right?
Yeah.
I think that this is really important because this is the work of a thought leader. Thought leader, if you were thinking that this is just to make yourself look cute, okay? I'm sorry, this is not the right podcast for you. You might as well
No.
just press pause and ask yourself, are you willing to serve? Because Cleaver is the
Hmm.
kind of thought leader who is the right person for our time. And it's not just about, oh my God, how do I get out there and get more visibility so I can, get like these 500 likes or whatever the fluffy thing
Yeah.
is. It's about how can I promote an idea and a set of ways of being and embodying that idea that is going to plant seeds now and affect change 7 generations from now. This is deep
Sure.
work, folks.
Sure.
And
Sure.
Cleaver has done this. Let me give you a real life example. There's a human being running out in the world, and his name is Lamar. I better look up this brother's Lamar Wumble.
Oh my gosh.
Lamar Wumbo, who is now a coach, he's a speaker. I mean, this is a brilliant young man. And he calls himself a professional dad, which I absolutely love that. Lamar Wumbo gave a tribute to Cleaver, talking about how you saw him. Lamar talks about coming in for a review. You were his supervisor.
Yeah.
And he laid out all of these beautiful things that he had done throughout the year, right? And everybody was nodding and everybody was like, yeah, dude, like you did that. Yeah, you are that person. And he's like, okay, cool, cool. I'm feeling it. It's I need a raise that matches what I just described having brought to you. And somebody in the room let him know, actually, that's not the time right now. We're not going to be able to give you the raise.
That's right.
Dude lost it. This is Lamar himself talking about what happened. He says, I completely lost it. I started crying, which was a first for him. He's not the kind of person who typically cries like that.
Yeah.
And the more he was in that room, the more he felt the weight of, I just, I'm not, like, you can't get ahead.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the reason why that moment became a life-changing moment for him is because Cleaver saw that and said the words that you said to him were, it's okay for you to be upset and it's okay
Yeah.
for you to cry. And
That's
he
true.
cried even harder.
Oh my gosh. It's one of those moments that I don't remember
Oh,
specifically.
he does. Oh, he
He
does.
really does. Because when he reached out to me
Changed his
before
life.
making that, and it really moved me when he reached out before, he's a good person with integrity, so he reached out before making that public. That yeah, I was so moved of, and then of course it all comes rushing back when he said it. That yeah, to me in that moment, it just felt like the right thing to do. I didn't think of like how do I transform this into a powerful moment. It was just yeah, like, dude, I get that. And I'm a manager, so I also have to figure out how do I communicate that this is not about you. They just decided that this isn't for you right now. But that's not a reflection of your value or your worth. And obviously, it can feel that way when you just made a whole case about why you should be paid more.
And for me, one of the things that, again, we need to be different kinds of thought leaders than the examples that came before is the embodiment of what we say we're about in private moments, in small moments, in moments that you're not necessarily going to remember for the rest of your life, but are going to impact the person on the other side of what you have to say, how
That's
you
right.
be. Yo, like, let me tell you something. We're very quick and good to take people down who we think are at huge public levels, and you should be doing this and da da da.
That's right. That's right.
But how are you showing up with integrity in the small politics of your life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Capital P, but small letter P. And
Yes.
to me, that is the power of a different kind of thought leader. Like
Oh,
that,
right.
that shit that you're talking out there, are you practicing it?
Okay, because that makes me think of one of my favorite thought leaders of all time, the one and only Toni Cade Bambara. Shout out to her. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Every single time, every single time. And Toni Cade, the thing I have read the
Well,
legitimate
first of all, you and I are about to go on a like bubble, right? Because we're already in a bubble. Let's bring it in. Let's let people understand who this baddie was.
Toni Cade. Okay, so Toni Cade Bambara is part of what now is considered that wave of Black women writers in the late 70s and 80s, the type of renaissance, so to speak, of Black fiction and literature that happened largely led by Black women in the 70s and 80s.
Nice.
She was distinct in a way, though, because, well, these are my opinions. Well, a little more context. She's originally from Atlanta. She moved to New York as a young person and she ends up developing a career partly being edited by the other icon, Toni Morrison, while she was working at Penguin Random House. And Toni Morrison believed in her deeply even when they were at odds, because you know Morrison, if you know Morrison, her whole thing was the work, which was writing. That everything has to, whatever you're trying to change, hearts, minds, whatever, is gonna be in the writing if you're a writer. And Toni Cade was more of the mind of yes, and there's other things that we can be doing in the world because she, comparatively, which isn't fair at all, but was more active, so to speak, in activist circles than Morrison. But we're not comparing them. They worked together. They really did. And so Toni Cade, the reason I thought of her is because I feel like she embodies a lot of the things that I believe in. That one of them, she understood and leaned in strongly into internet transnational solidarity
Mm.
of how do we make sure that people across these imaginary borders are understanding how our experiences are informing each other. That she literally went on a trip right after the Vietnam War, to Vietnam and connected with the women there to learn about their story and literally wrote a novel based on that experience afterwards. But the thing I was thinking about with her is she of the many iconic things she did is she edited the groundbreaking anthology The Black Woman that was published in 1970, and it's the first US publication of Black women's writing in the contemporary. So it had, you name it, Audre Lorde, you name the girl, Nikki Giovanni, they were in there. Even people that don't get enough airtime are in that list of women. And in that publication, she wrote an essay called On the Issues of Roles. It's the thing I've read the most since 2019 when I was introduced to it. I literally return to it very often. But what Mahoho was just saying is part of what she argues at the very end of that essay. The essay is basically making the case, which is so ahead of the time, 1970, y'all, which means it was written in the late 60s. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because the way publishing, we'll get there. But so really, we're talking about a 1960s piece that was published in 1970. But she's making the case around gendered roles, that we need to abandon gendered roles and
Mm.
then decide who we want to be. And
Mm.
that can be those things, but that you need to decide. But to get to the point that Mahodi was just making is what she's saying ultimately by the end of that essay is that if you believe in making change, of being the revolutionary self, you actually have to be that first. And
Yes.
that she literally says, it don't make no sense to like be on the street talking about justice and blah blah blah, and then your little brother is struggling to finish their homework. It doesn't make sense to be writing whatever, whatever, but then in your actual house, so to
Yes.
speak, people don't have it together. And that she says ultimately, and it's funny because she, again, this is the late 60s, so she's talking about like instant coffee and microwaves and all this. But really, what she's arguing, she's saying like the popular sentiment is that we don't have time, but we actually do. In fact, you have to make time if you're being serious about this type of level of shift, because if you're not embodying it, then
Mm.
what, then otherwise it's just talk.
Mm.
A
Mm.
thought leader has to be the embodiment of the, and
Mm.
again, we're all humans,
Yes, of
unfortunately.
course. Yeah.
I don't want to be. I'm like, again, Aquarius, alien. I feel more so. No, but we're
You're
humans.
superhuman, honey. You're superhuman. You're not just human. That's okay.
It's to say like be in the like trip and fall in the
Yes.
work to embody it as
Yes.
opposed to being a mess and you're just talking shit. Excuse
Yeah.
my French, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? That's like, yeah, and I really appreciate that of somebody. And if I may, she wasn't saying this, but it spoke to one of my lenses, is that in that prompt to abandon gendered roles. that it's part of what me as a queer person, especially in the last like 5 or 10 years, have really sat with of queerness for me and many others. There's a moment in that journey of reckoning where you have to really be clear of like, is this who I am?
Mm,
And this is who I am. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm bringing that up of like I've that's has had me wonder many times and asked directly, particularly cis hetero people, people who are
mhm.
was it less jargony or do you want me to not? It's
I think people
jargony.
know what's this
Okay, cool.
narrative. Like you're outside of the queer experience, right?
Sure.
Maybe you are an ally outside, and sometimes if people are coming at you, they're coming sideways at you. But people
Yes.
who are,
Of the
plain
norm.
vanilla, plain
Yeah, let's say
vanilla.
cis has the society, the social norm for the most part. But the reason I'm bringing that up is it made me wonder, and that's what was powerful about that part of her essay, is how many people who identify as straight actually do that? Or are you going with what the world told you you are? And I'm not, and I'm wonder what it would look like for people to be in that inquiry and then decide. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying you're not straight or cishet. I'm saying what would it look like if you really reckoned with yourself to be honest and ask yourself, where am I with all of these things? Okay, so I am whatever the thing is, as opposed to one time when I was 3, I looked at this little girl and then my family hyped me up, and so now I like girls. You know what I mean? Because there's an ownership of your identity that is possible when you do that. And so for I think Toni Cade understood that when she wrote that of like it's not that you can't be a woman or any of these things, but what happens when you decide that? When you choose that's the thing you are and not the thing that's being put upon you, that allows you to have clarity. And in terms of, because we're speaking to leaders, is that that reckoning is important because then you can really have integrity and be strongly in your beliefs because it's not something you just consumed or absorbed.
Mm,
It was an active
mm,
doing, so to speak, and
mm.
undoing.
Active doing. Um, I want to shift gears because I hear you talking really powerfully about a very specific kind of thought leader, right? Who is exactly the kind of guiding star that we want to work ourselves towards. And a lot of people who are listening to the podcast might not necessarily have already accomplished the level of, I mean, one of the things about Toni Cade Bambara that is mind-boggling, 1960s, you're talking about how many decades ago? And here we
Right.
are sitting in this 2025, and
Still talking about
we're,
it.
we're still talking. So that's like, yo, that's what a thought leader does, shaping culture, shaping
Yeah, yeah,
reality this many decades forward. And by the way, let me just be clear. Like, I have a little 2-year-old. My 2-year-old's great grandchildren are going to be wrestling with Toni Cade Bambara's ideas. That's the level, right? That's the level
yeah,
we're all trying, aspiring to get towards. Where are we right now, though? We might be
yeah,
starting off from a very different place. And you, Cleaver, you're so fascinating because you have this really broad experience that a lot of people may not necessarily know about. In a
yeah,
heartbeat, we're going to get to the Black Joy Project. So I really want people to get excited because the Black Joy Project and hearing about that is really like that's meaty and juicy. But let's take a
yeah,
step back and
yeah,
let's go to your days when you were working in publishing. And let's bring somebody into the cutting board who admires the thought leaders that we're describing, right? People like Toni Morrison, like Toni Cade Bambara, and they see themselves as man, like I want to move in that direction. And it's important to call out to be a thought leader. You need to get to work. Remember, we talked about you got to be fierce. You've got to find the friction and speak to it. But girl, like action, okay? And the action
hmm
looks like you need to put out your words, your books, what have you written? You need to
hmm
be on stages, right?
hmm
You need
hmm
to
hmm
like understand the power of storytelling, like, but it's not only on stages. That's another thing. Public
That's right.
speaking is not something that happens only on stage.
That's right.
You also need to be building community.
That's right.
And there's such an opaqueness behind the publishing industry. People
Oof,
don't know how. How do I do this? Like how?
it's true.
What is this? Where is publishing?
It's
Oh,
not transparent.
New York. So what I would love you to help somebody understand, like some of the things that are the wisdoms that you got, right? Having worked in that industry for some time, what
Mhm.
are some of the takeaways that you're like, people don't know enough about this? And also, like, let's be real, Toni Cade Bambara, Toni Morrison's a really great example. I mean, nobody can dispute that she's a thought leader. Nobody, nobody. Even the people who,
Haters.
want to like burn her books, they know
Yeah.
they're burning them because this thought leadership is too damn dangerous.
Okay. Yes.
But here's the thing. When she was at work, and especially that time that you're talking about, she was working at Random House as an editor because she had to pay them bills, right?
Okay. She was raising two kids
Was
by
raising two
herself.
babies by herself. So we also need to help people connect this thing of yes, thought leadership matters, but how do we connect our thought leadership to being able to feed the babies, right?
That's so
Like,
real.
like
Yeah.
that's not a joke. It's not
No, it's
something
not.
that's like I'm not out here advocating for you to write something moving for 7 generations forward and you can't feed the kids. Like Toni Cade Bambara would have issues with that. So
Okay.
make it make sense. Like
That's right.
what what is it that's happening in publishing that people need to know about? And also, what are the dollars and cents? And what are people being paid? And what could we be advocating for to make sure that people stay paid?
That's real. Um, the first thing that came to mind was shout out to my very severely underpaid experience in publishing because that is part of the nature. Is it's still, I mean, there's been some dents in it in the last 5 years, but I was working there right before the world changed
Mm.
in during the pandemic, which was kind of a good thing. I got to see it before this,
Mm.
this like wave towards what we saw of tons of people being hired into the industry and who were adjacent otherwise. But anyways, um, it's funny, I never connected this until this conversation, but what I was saying earlier about knowing yourself, that's so important in that space. One of them, obviously, or maybe not so obviously, is that if you're in the position to be an author, if you're in the shopping, so to speak, of getting your book bought by an editor, that is one of the main considerations. It's not always just, is this a great idea if we're talking about nonfiction? But it's also, are you the best person to tell that story?
Mm.
That has to be an alignment of great idea.
Mm.
For example, one of the books I worked on, which really taught me so much, it's called Ask Me About My Uterus.
Mm.
I'm sorry, but I'm forgetting the writer's name right now, but that story is about endometriosis and the experiences of the ways that women in the American healthcare system often are dealing with severe amounts of pain because of the way it's been socialized to believe that women can withstand certain levels of pain, that they're
Mm.
being asked from a 1 to 10, and it's like a 10 is not the scale of the pain. Um, and that in her, so, but the reason why she is such a great storyteller of that, because a lot of people have written about endometriosis, but she was able to connect her personal experience that she was somebody that went to college, and in the first year, I want to say, she just started having all of this intense pain. It didn't, I lied. It didn't start in college. It got worse by the time she got to college. And
Abby,
that through that, say it again?
Abby Norman.
Abby Norman, yes, Abby. So Abby ends up having to like she starts failing really because she can't go to class.
Mm.
The reason I'm saying this is that it was a really great marriage of this thing that is really important, this topic about endometriosis and the awareness of women's health, severe cases and chronic illnesses around women's health, or let's say people with a uterus. And this person that had experienced it. And more than that, that she had done the work to understand it beyond her personal story. Because that's not enough either. Just because you experienced it doesn't make you the best storyteller of that thing. It's not that you're not the best storyteller of your experience, but you need to be able to go beyond your story. That even, yeah, so I'll just stay there. I don't want to go, I go into too many directions, but you want to be able to do
But
that. Okay, so I was mentioning this book. It's called Bibliotherapy in the Bronx by Emily Rumble. It's an excellent account of the history of books and this practice of bibliotherapy around therapeutic practices. And Emily does a really great job of incorporating her personal story in a way that illustrates these bigger points, if that makes sense. So in a way, you have to be able to you have to borrow from fiction in a sense and make character. You have to you're still telling a story. So it has to be narratively formed. This is an intentional thing. This is not you telling your family a story that night after you got home from work. This is you trying to get ideas forward. Because as Toni Morrison says in her 1994 Nobel Prize speech, narrative is one of the most powerful ways she's understood that humans learn something. And so if you
Mm,
can tell a story in a certain way, people can get it. They really will. We all have that thing that
yes,
somebody told us a really good story and now we understand. We don't even remember the story, we understand the message of it.
yes.
That again, I don't remember I read that book, Abby's book in 2019. I don't remember all of the story, but I remember that I left understanding that I need to be aware of what endometriosis is. I need to be hyper vigilant when a woman or a person with a uterus around me is saying that they're having severe pain, and to be
Mm,
at least one of the voices to ask, is this more than a period? Is that really what's happening? This sounds like more than menstruation, potentially.
mm.
That it left me with that type of movedness, if that's a word,
Now
around
it
like
is.
around like, yeah, I need to be aware, or like this other book I got to work on about feminism in Eastern Europe in the 20s. And this was a professor, so presumably like it's a professor, but no, she really did the work to illustrate that in the 20s in Eastern Europe, there was social policies that would now be considered progressive. So
Mm,
over 100 years ago, and that's all to say again, like she was, and hers, this is another way, part of what we're talking about is she got into that room because she wrote an article. So
mm,
one way to get yourself in these spaces or rooms is not to write a book, is to write one really well-written article. That is, if you can write 1,000 words or 1,500 words that's really strong about something, that can actually pique the interest of an editor and agent to reach out to you. I remember how it led. I think in her case, it was because it was on the internet. It was through a series of like social media and that type of thing. And I can tell you how that affected my story too later. But it don't think you have to climb this mountain when you want to write a book. You actually can write an article that is appropriately placed. It doesn't mean it has to be the New York Times or the Guardian. It just has to be appropriately placed in the right audience that can lead to these things too. That doesn't I guess that's one thing to say to the broader question of things I learned from my experience is that for better or worse, there's no hard and fast rules within publishing. There's no like these are the 6 things you need to do and then you'll get a book deal. It doesn't even work like that to get on the New York Times bestselling list, let alone to get a book deal. That part of it is like most things in life, it's relationship based. It's
mm,
actually about the things you're doing that it has nothing to do with writing. Is can you articulate your perspective clearly outside of writing in a room when you only have 3 minutes or less to talk about it? Can you articulate your thoughts and ideas well enough that somebody can speak on your behalf? Because a lot of the times you're trusting that an agent or an editor or a salesperson, not you, is in a room advocating on your behalf for this book to move further into the world. That there's a moment where literally you're not even invited. It's a what you call it,
House.
in-house experience for that company to discuss what is going to be sold and where and who should be reading it and that type of thing. And we're talking like in my case, I spent 2 years working on a book and my editor had like 2 minutes to talk
Mm-hmm.
about that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still in capitalism. You don't get an afternoon to describe this wonderful book. You get 5 minutes to talk about 10 books. And you've been preparing for like 2 months with your team for this presentation. That the people in that room are then responsible to literally go out into the rest of the world to figure out who else will want to buy this book. So at that point, you're 2 people removed from you to be having your book in Alaska, Australia, wherever the thing is, so that all is rooted in this clarity of who you are because you have to be willing to make decisions and potentially initiate conversations that are related to that. That in my case, I feel like I can speak about this now because it's been far enough. Is that I had to have certain conversations, not about
Pause,
the writing. Yeah.
pause, pause, pause. I'm gonna pause you right here because number one, like, whoa, just whoa. Whoa, we really we need to distill this for the person
Yeah.
who's listening because I'm not sure you're aware of this, but this is huge for somebody
Okay.
who is outside of this particular world we're talking about, doesn't know very much. Maybe you know something. I mean, you're a reader, so you do know something about publishing. I just want to summarize what Cleaver has said so that you have it, right?
Okay.
Cleaver says, number one, the point of friction. You have to have something to say. That's number one. That's duh. That's like, but it can't just be like, oh, psh, I know she put a book out, so I'm going to say the same thing. No, friction. What's missing? What's
Yes.
different? What is
Yeah.
it that you're going to say that no one else has said? When we go back to the example of the endometriosis, which is such a powerful example, how many people are out here talking about what's happening in their uterus?
Exactly.
Like, like that's not everyday conversation around our vaginas, around our uteruses, and also around taboos in the culture, right?
Yeah.
If I say I can't make this call because I'm on my period, how does that make me look professionally?
Exactly.
And here's this woman who is raising her hand and saying, actually, it goes deeper than that.
That's
So
right.
you have to have some friction. You have to be clear about you. Who are you to
Yeah.
tell the story? Why you, basically?
Yes.
What
Why
makes
you?
you uniquely qualified to tell the story? If you're going to be writing a story about, like, let's talk about my uterus, let's talk about my what's happening in my, you better have a fucking uterus.
Exactly. At the very least.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's visceral, but it's really important as well in what you said about building narrative. And that's number three, which is it happened, you had an experience that happened to you. That's great. But can you walk us and take that experience that happened to you and build it into narrative,
That's
which
right.
becomes work that's around craft and storytelling and the stuff that Cleaver and I spent a lot of time thinking about as writers of
Yeah.
fiction. All
Yeah.
of that skill, that's why that's important to this work. And the books
Totally
that
fine.
are the best that you don't even understand, you don't even realize as a reader that what's actually happening is craft. And what's
Yeah.
actually happening is like that good old thing called storytelling, which
Yeah.
you were just saying, Toni Morrison and her speech and how you can still remember it. And what she was saying was like, listen, stories is the best ways that is human architecture. We are built that way. It is our
Yes.
DNA, okay?
Yes.
It's part of how we survived for all these
Yeah.
like millennia through
Literally.
story. So you need to tell us a story. You also said something powerful, two things. Number four, relationships. So the way that you're going to get this book done is through not just necessarily the relationships you think, like, oh, now I need to start networking with people in publishing. No, it's who is it who can help you, or how can you articulate your perspective in ways that other people can pick up what you're saying and
That's
run
right.
with it
That's
really
right.
easily and quickly. I mean, I can sit here and give you for days the experiences that I had when I was publishing my book, and I know you have the same, that are around educating your publisher and your agent about what the book is, what the book is not, who
Mm-hmm.
you are, who you're not. Because trust me, there's a lot of tomfoolery that comes with putting a book out. And it's not coming from your editor, your agent, but it
That's right.
comes from you educating them so that when they're out in the world, they're fielding things for you. And it's not coming at you about like, oh, da 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 da, let me pull her in this direction. It's like, nope, she's already told me that's not what this book is about.
That's
Okay.
right. That's right.
Let's go.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
number five, and I think this is where strategy comes in, right? And this is where working with somebody who knows a little bit about that world is helpful. It's not necessarily about starting out the gate with like a full book done. Actually, that
Okay.
might be the worst waste of time because what if that's not tested with an audience and nobody wants that book?
That's
Could you
right.
write an article first, right?
Yes.
Could you could you get on a stage somewhere and say something that like grabs everybody's attention? Think of
Yeah.
Amanda Gorman and how much publishers were like just salivating, chomping at the bit to work with her because of the power of her words when she gets in front of a mic.
That's
So,
right.
what are we saying here? Like, there's a playbook here for you. All right.
There is.
You had a really beautiful point where you were going to talk about your experience of the Black Joy Project and how it's in relationship to everything that we've just laid out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the other thing too, just on the last point you made about starting small, because the thing is, when you're com like writing a book sounds cute, but you have to really think about that. Are you willing to sit and craft at least 50,000 words about one topic? Seriously. And if you can do 1,500, that's going from 0 to 1,500 as opposed to 0 to 50,000, which can be very overwhelming, especially if this is your first book. That even with me, I had written articles and things before, and I still had these moments of like, oh my gosh, I have to write a lot more, you know, like you really got to write a lot more. And that gets into the crafty things about words meaning as much as sentences, as much as paragraphs, and these types of things. That's not for right now. But with the Black Joy Project, yeah, I feel like it was an amalgam of a lot of these things that I'm talking about. That one is I had started working on the Black Joy Project in 2015. So by the time any prospect of a book came, it was at least 5 years into that work. And so it wasn't this, oh, I have an idea, and then in a couple of months it turned into a book. I really had been living and in this thing enough to get to a point where it was like, okay, this feels like a moment that it can, this is the next iteration of this project. Where modernity comes into all of this is that through a series of events that partly was tied to who I worked for originally when I worked in publishing, she sent me a text message on a very random day and said, "Hey, this tweet reminded me of you. You should check it out." And as somebody who's not really on the Twitter streets like that, but I trust her so much that I was like, "Yeah, I'll go look at this." And I look at it, and it was very simple. It was just somebody saying, "Hey, I'm basically like," and again, context, this is the summer of 2020, so the world is on fire. And this person is saying, I'm not interested in more stories about trauma and this type of thing. I literally said, like, I want to find more stories about Black Joy. So I tried to DM her. I can't. And so then I'm like, huh, I can't DM her. So now I'm looking more, you know, when you like adjust your glasses, then I'm like, oh, this is a senior editor at a publishing house.
Okay.
And so I'm like, well, you only live once. And so I heard it in my spirit to just say something publicly. And
Hmm.
so I did. I said like, hey, I've been working on this thing for 5 years, if you're interested. And what happened next is more important than that,
Pause,
is
pause,
that,
pause, pause,
yeah.
pause. Sorry. What do you mean you said it publicly? Because one of the things that a lot of folks in the audience, some people find challenging is asking for things publicly and vulnerable.
I
So
literally tweeted. I had
you
to say it.
literally tweeted,
I said, I mean, I have a screenshot somewhere, but effectively, I was communicating. I actually have been working on something around Black Joy for the last five
raise your
years.
hand.
If you have any interest. But the next thing was more important, is a writer that I really admire co-signed me publicly. She said, and out of nowhere, I didn't even know she was paying attention to me or this, I don't know what's
Who
going on.
this? Who this? Who
Her
this?
name is Bridget Davis. Love
Because
her.
we
She's the
need
author of
to.
like Bridget Davis. She's the author of one, two, three, four books, a novel and three nonfiction titles. Two. Two nonfiction titles. One of them is my favorite book. The important thing is that this was happening in 2020, and she wrote my favorite book of 2019. But
Mm,
anyways,
mm.
she co-signed it, and then my former boss, who's the one who sent me the tweet, did the same thing publicly, and so that created this thing of like, oh well, these are my peers because Rakia, the editor, she knows who these people are, because the publishing world is not that big,
Yeah.
and so yeah, and so that led to this us. I think she emailed me. I don't remember, but basically we got on the phone either that day or the next day for like 2 hours and had this very powerful, because you know, I'm being hesitant. Well, you don't know this, but I'm being hesitant because this is a big moment of I've been doing this thing independently since the beginning, and that really it was this intuitive initiative to feel better, and that I was learning community was going to be a part of that healing, is I needed to figure out how to build more community around this thing, that I wanted to draw more attention to the ways that our joy is not just this frivolous thing to feel good, that it actually is a powerful thing.
But
And so,
that's a really important point, Cleaver, because number one, we need to backtrack a little bit and tell people what the Black Joy
oh
Project,
yeah,
not the book is.
yeah.
Because again, Cleaver did something that's extraordinary. You build your thought leadership around a movement. Where did the
Mm.
movement begin? And I also want to add, and this is really important because we're listening now in 2025, and someone hearing this is going to be like, Black joy. Like everybody talks about Black joy, right? Like Walmart is talking about Black joy. What do you mean? Like make it like how is there friction there? How is but in 2015 when you started handing
It
over the
wasn't like that. Yes. Yeah, 2015, again, historical context is this is a year um after oh my gosh, Michael Brown Jr. was found murdered in St. Louis. This is like a month or two after Sandra Bland being found dead in her jail cell in Texas. A lot of that was happening, and this technologically speaking, this was the beginning of what now is normal, to see this like hyper visibility around violence, that
Mhm.
we were being literally bombarded on the internet
Yes.
with all of these evidences of things we already knew were true, but now they were undeniable because the everyday person can upload it to the internet, and then 7 million people can repost it.
It's the
And
beginning of hashtag Black Lives Matter.
exactly. This is like year two, or the first year officially after it had started. That which is all to say, like in the ethos was this momentum around this visibility, and that we needed to name it and talk about that this is happening for real and take action towards it. And what part of the effect of that is it traumatizes us or re-traumatizes us, that we're now, and again, this is not news to the people that are being impacted by this. So now we don't even get the choice in a way to turn it off. Because before, yeah, it was just a different reality now that you didn't have to choose anymore. It literally could be brought to your phone. And so my spirit felt, well, the moment was full of grief for me. That it was almost not even, yeah, it was nearing a year of losing my uncle suddenly, Ali, rest in peace. While also personally, I was the regional director for this huge nonprofit, and so I was managing a bunch of adults and the schools that they were a part of, because we worked with public high schools in New York City. And I also
Sorry, and the schools served kids who were at risk of this kind of
a
violence.
lot of them, yeah, because this is New York City, the
Yeah.
biggest public school system in the country, and we were working across New York City, literally. I think except for Staten Island. And then also, so that's professionally. Personally, I lost my uncle, and then also I was part of that movement at that time of like, how am I contributing to this? Fortunately, I was part of a collective of people that was very diasporic, and so a lot of our conversation was always not just the US, but what is the world of Black people, and how does this connect to everything. So anyway, so that's all to describe the grief that this one morning I woke up and I felt terrible, like to the point I wish I hadn't woken up.
Mm.
And then I had this very spiritual experience of literally seeing the words Black and Joy. And so I uploaded a picture of my mom onto Facebook. And
Oh, she better than that. She's real hot. I've seen your profile.
okay, it's where I get it
I
from.
met your mommy. She's
You
all right.
did. Okay, that lady is fierce. And
Yeah.
so I posted this picture with the stream of consciousness, basically a call to action saying that it was important, this moment of this hyper visibility, and I felt that we needed to also interject and inject as much joy as possible. And I think I can understand this more now clearly, but in the moment I had this sense of like, I'm not gonna make it if I don't focus on this. Like
Mm.
this will be the end of me if I don't move in this other direction. That I didn't know what was gonna happen. I just knew. tomorrow post another picture. Tomorrow post another picture. I don't have no social media strategy. This wasn't a strategy. It was just literally trying to feel better. And
Mm,
then within a couple of weeks, people started reaching out to me saying like, "Hey, this I was having a bad nightmare and this calmed me down enough." Or a friend of mine had moved to start community organizing in South Carolina, and she's like, "This is helping my adjust," those type of things. And so I'm like, "Okay, this is bigger than me. I was
mm,
just trying to feel better. I
mhm,
really was just trying to feel better." And
mm.
so I tell my bestie, and she's like, "Why are you talking to me? Do something about it." Best friend.